Florence, a city of breathtaking beauty carved from stone and genius. But behind the shimmering domes and painted masterpieces lay a shocking truth. A single family, powerful beyond measure, sculpted this world. The Medici. Their story is not just about bankers and rulers. It is about a relentless hunger for beauty, power, and everlasting glory, paid for with fortunes so vast they warp the imagination. They poured unthinkable wealth into art, transforming their city, their family, and the very idea of what art could be. They bought genius, cultivated it, and sometimes even crushed it. This is the story of the 8 Medici figures who threw money at masterpieces, shaping the world as we know it for reasons that might just surprise you. Number 8, Ferdinando I de' Medici. Ferdinando I de' Medici, who became Grand Duke of Tuscany in 1587, inherited a sprawling collection and an established courtly tradition of artistic patronage. His background as a cardinal in Rome had already given him a taste for grand projects and ancient sculptures. When his brother Francesco I died, Ferdinando stepped into a role that allowed him to express his artistic ambitions on an even larger scale. He understood that art was not just about personal enjoyment, it was about presenting a powerful image of the Medici dynasty to the world. Ferdinando continued the work on the Uffizi Gallery, which had begun under Cosimo I. He oversaw the final touches on the Tribune of the Uffizi, a dazzling octagonal room designed to display the most precious objects from the Medici collection. This room became a showcase for ancient Roman sculptures, exquisite jewels, and rare paintings, acting as a personal museum for the Grand Duke and a display of his family's wealth and refined taste. Among the treasures displayed were the Venus de' Medici, a celebrated ancient Greek statue of Aphrodite, and the Medici vase, a colossal ancient Roman crater. Ferdinando wanted these pieces to be seen, admired, and to elevate the status of his family in the eyes of European royalty and visiting dignitaries. Beyond the Uffizi, Ferdinando invested heavily in garden design and sculpture. He expanded the Boboli Gardens, transforming them into a sprawling, green landscape filled with fountains, grottos, and mythological statues. One of the most notable additions was the Fountain of Neptune, sculpted by Stoldo Lorenzi and later by Giambologna's workshop, a dramatic centerpiece that combined classical mythology with impressive hydraulic engineering. Ferdinando also commissioned new sculptures for the gardens, including the colossal statue of Jupiter by Valerio Scioli, which stood proudly in the garden's amphitheater. These gardens were not just pleasant spaces, they were outdoor galleries designed for elaborate courtly entertainments and to impress visitors with the Medici's control over nature and art. Ferdinando was a significant patron of Giambologna, one of the most important sculptors of the late Renaissance. Giambologna's workshop produced numerous bronze and marble works for the Grand Duke. Ferdinando commissioned the equestrian monument to Cosimo I, a grand bronze statue that still stands in the Piazza della Signoria, honoring his father. This statue, cast in 1595, served as a powerful public declaration of Medici power and legitimacy. Giambologna also created the bronze statue of Ferdinando himself on horseback, originally intended for Florence, but later moved to the Piazza Santissima Annunziata. These equestrian statues were symbols of imperial authority and were commonly used by European rulers to project an image of strength and continuity. The Grand Duke also supported a wide array of other artists and craftsmen. He fostered the Opificio delle Pietre Dure, a workshop dedicated to creating intricate mosaics from semi-precious stones. These workshops produced elaborate tabletops, cabinet panels, and other decorative objects, often featuring floral designs or landscapes known as camesso. These luxury items were highly sought after across Europe and showcased Florentine craftsmanship at its finest. But Ferdinando sent these precious gifts to other rulers, using art as a tool for diplomacy and cementing political alliances. Ferdinando's interest in the sciences also influenced his artistic patronage. He supported Galileo Galilei, providing him with a court position and resources for his astronomical observations. While not directly artistic patronage, this support contributed to the broader intellectual and cultural environment that had long been fostered by the Medici. He also established the Museo di Storia Naturale, a natural history museum collecting rare animals, plants, and geological specimens, reflecting the broader Renaissance fascination with the natural world. The Grand Duke also oversaw the construction of the Cappella dei Principi, the Prince's Chapel, at the Basilica of San Lorenzo. This grand mausoleum was designed to be the final resting place for the Medici Grand Dukes. Adorned with rich marble frescoes and a massive dome, the chapel was a testament to the family's enduring power and their desire for an eternal legacy. While much of its elaborate decoration was completed by later Grand Dukes, Ferdinando laid the groundwork for this monumental project. The chapel's design, especially its use of valuable materials like porphyry and jasper, communicated the immense wealth and prestige of the Medici. Ferdinando's court was a vibrant center for music, theater, and spectacle. He hosted elaborate masques and intermezzi, theatrical performances that incorporated music, dance, and elaborate stage sets. These events were often commissioned for important family occasions like weddings and involved the collaboration of numerous artists, musicians, and costume designers. The spectacle served to entertain but also to display the Medici's wealth, sophistication, and ability to command talent. These court entertainments contributed to the development of early opera as composers experimented with combining music and drama. Ferdinando also acquired significant ancient Roman artworks. He purchased the collection of the Roman noble family, the Della Valle, which included numerous classical sculptures. These acquisitions further enriched the Medici's already impressive collection of antiquities, reinforcing their status as inheritors of classical culture and taste. The display of ancient art was a way for the Medici to connect themselves to the glory of ancient Rome, asserting their own authority and intellectual superiority. Number 7. Francesco I de' Medici. Francesco I de' Medici, who became Grand Duke of Tuscany in 1574, held a deep fascination for alchemy, science, and exotic wonders, and his artistic patronage reflected these unique interests. Unlike some of his predecessors who focused on public displays of power through monumental art, Francesco often commissioned smaller, more intimate works that spoke to his intellectual curiosity and experimental nature. His rule is often associated with a certain kind of courtly refinement and an inclination towards the mysterious. One of Francesco's most personal and intriguing projects was the Studiolo in the Palazzo Vecchio. This small, secret study was designed by Giorgio Vasari and filled with allegorical paintings and sculptures. The Studiolo was a private sanctuary where Francesco could contemplate his collections and intellectual pursuits. Its walls were adorned with paintings by artists like Bronzino, Alessandro Allori, and Giovanni Battista Naldini, depicting scenes related to the four elements, mythological subjects, and the processes of alchemy. Each painting had an opening for a cabinet or niche where Francesco stored his precious stones, scientific instruments, and rare objects. The Studiolo was a perfect example of a Renaissance cabinet of curiosities, reflecting the encyclopedic knowledge and intellectual curiosity of its owner. Francesco also had a passion for artisanal workshops and experimental techniques. He established the Casino di San Marco, a building where artists and artisans could live and work, experimenting with new materials and methods. This was a place where painters, sculptors, and goldsmiths collaborated, producing objects of high craftsmanship. Among the talents nurtured there was Giambologna, who continued to produce significant works for Francesco. Giambologna's bronze group, Rape of the Sabine Women, while completed under Ferdinando, was conceived during Francesco's reign and demonstrates the sculptor's mastery of complex multi-figure compositions. The Grand Duke particularly admired Giambologna's ability to imbue his figures with dynamic movement and emotional intensity. The Grand Duke was particularly interested in the development of porcelain in Europe. He established the first porcelain factory in Florence, attempting to replicate the coveted Chinese porcelain. While his Medici porcelain was not true hard-paste porcelain, it was a significant early European attempt and showcased Francesco's commitment to pushing artistic and technological boundaries. These Blue and white wares, often decorated with floral or grotesque motifs, were highly prized and represent a fusion of scientific experimentation and artistic endeavor. He aimed to make Florence a center for luxury goods that rivaled those produced in the East. Francesco also continued the beautification of Florence and the Medici villas. He commissioned architect Bernardo Buontalenti, who was a master of special effects and stage design for various projects. Buontalenti designed elaborate fountains for the Boboli Gardens, including the Grotto of Buontalenti, an artificial cave filled with stalactites, sponges, and mythological statues, creating a fantastical and theatrical environment. This grotto was not just a decorative element, it was a sensory experience, playing with light, water, and sound. The Buontalenti also contributed to the design of theatrical productions and court spectacles, creating machinery for elaborate special effects that amazed audiences. The Grand Duke's marriage to Bianca Capello, a Venetian noblewoman from a less prominent background, also influenced his patronage. He commissioned portraits of her, including some by Alessandro Allori, which presented her as a woman of beauty and refinement. These portraits helped to legitimize her position at court, especially given the controversy surrounding their relationship. Francesco's interest in beautiful objects extended to jewelry and precious stones, and he often commissioned exquisite pieces for his wife. Francesco was also a collector of scientific instruments and natural curiosities. His collection included astrological spheres, telescopes, and specimens of rare minerals and animals. These objects were not merely scientific tools, they were often beautifully crafted works of art in themselves, adorned with intricate engravings and made from valuable materials. He saw no strict division between art and science, and his patronage often blurred these lines, reflecting a holistic Renaissance worldview. His patronage, while perhaps less outwardly grand than that of Cosimo I, was significant for its focus on innovation, experimentation, and a more personal, intellectual approach to art. He nurtured a generation of artists and artisans who were skilled in diverse media and techniques, from painting and sculpture to goldsmithing and ceramics. Francesco's reign saw a continuation of the Florentine artistic tradition, but with a distinct emphasis on curiosity, craftsmanship, and the exploration of new frontiers in both art and science. His studiolo remains a powerful symbol of his private intellectual world. Number 6, Cosimo I de' Medici. Cosimo I de' Medici, who became Duke of Florence in 1537, and later the first Grand Duke of Tuscany in 1569, dramatically reshaped the artistic landscape of Florence. Coming to power after a period of instability, he used art and architecture as powerful tools to solidify his rule, legitimize his dynasty, and project an image of absolute authority and magnificence. His patronage was systematic, extensive, and aimed at transforming Florence into a model Renaissance capital under his control. Cosimo I moved his official residence from the old Medici palace to the Palazzo Vecchio, the traditional seat of Florentine government. This move was a deliberate political statement, asserting his direct control over the city's historical power center. He then commissioned Giorgio Vasari, his court artist and architect, to undertake a massive renovation and redecoration of the Palazzo Vecchio. Vasari's frescoes in the Salone dei Cinquecento Hall of the 500 depicted the military victories of Florence, all attributed to Cosimo's leadership, glorifying his rule and showcasing the city's power under his direction. These vast narrative paintings served as propaganda, celebrating the Duke's military prowess and his astute political acumen. Another monumental project initiated by Cosimo I was the construction of the Uffizi Gallery. Originally designed by Vasari as administrative offices for the Florentine magistrates and guilds, it later became a major repository for the Medici art collection. The Uffizi was a daring architectural feat, a long, imposing building with a central courtyard that opened directly onto the Arno River. Cosimo envisioned it as a showcase for his bureaucratic efficiency and his family's artistic treasures. The upper floor, known as the Galleria, was eventually transformed into one of the world's first true public art museums, though it was primarily for the enjoyment of the Medici and their distinguished guests. Cosimo also commissioned the Corridoio Vasariano, a secret elevated passageway built by Vasari that connected the Palazzo Vecchio, the Uffizi, and the Palazzo Pitti across the Ponte Vecchio. This private corridor allowed the Duke and his family to move safely and discreetly between their residences and offices, literally above the heads of the populace. Adorned with paintings and offering panoramic views of the city, the Corridoio was a symbol of Cosimo's power and his desire for control and privacy, distinct from the public spaces of the city. In terms of sculpture, Cosimo I was a major patron of Benvenuto Cellini and Giambologna. Cellini, a master goldsmith and sculptor, created the iconic bronze statue of Perseus holding the head of Medusa, which stands in the Loggia dei Lanzi in Piazza della Signoria. This powerful sculpture, completed in 1554, was a public declaration of Cosimo's power over his enemies and his ability to maintain order. The selection of Perseus, a hero who conquered chaos, was a direct parallel to Cosimo's own narrative of bringing stability to Florence. Giambologna, another leading sculptor, created the Fountain of Neptune in Piazza della Signoria, a colossal marble sculpture of the sea god, and accompanying bronze figures which demonstrated Cosimo's vision for Florence as a new Rome, adorned with classical grandeur. The Palazzo Pitti, located on the other side of the Arno River, became the official ducal residence under Cosimo I. He purchased the unfinished palace from the Pitti family and significantly expanded it, transforming it into a vast, imposing structure suitable for a ruling dynasty. He also began the development of the Boboli Gardens behind the palace, turning a hillside into an elaborate example of Italian Renaissance garden design, complete with fountains, grottos, and an amphitheater. These gardens served as a private pleasure ground for the Medici and a grand setting for courtly spectacles and celebrations. Bronzino, the court painter, produced numerous portraits of Cosimo I, his wife Eleonora di Toledo, and their children. These portraits were meticulously rendered, depicting the sitters with an almost regal detachment adorned in rich fabrics and jewels. And they served as official images of the ducal family circulated throughout Europe to reinforce their status and alliances. Bronzino also painted allegorical and religious works for Cosimo, often incorporating elements of mannerism with its elongated figures and complex compositions. Cosimo I also founded the Accademia e Compagnia delle Arti del Disegno Academy and Company of the Arts of Drawing in 1563, with Vasari as its director and Michelangelo as an honorary member. This institution aimed to professionalize the artistic community, providing formal training and regulating artistic practice. It was a clear demonstration of Cosimo's desire to control and elevate the arts in Florence, ensuring a steady supply of skilled artists for his numerous projects. The Academy marked a shift towards a more institutionalized approach to artistic education and patronage. Cosimo's patronage extended to military architecture, fortifying the city and building new strongholds across his territories. While not art in the traditional sense, these impressive structures also served to project his authority and ensure the security of his realm. His ambitious projects, from grand palaces to impressive public sculptures, fundamentally reshaped the appearance of Florence and cemented the Medici's position as the unchallenged rulers of Tuscany. His reign marked a peak in state-sponsored art, where every commission served a purpose in the grand design of Medici power. Number 5, Giuliano de' Medici, Pope Clement VII. Julio di Giuliano de' Medici, who became Pope Clement VII in 1523, faced one of the most tumultuous periods in European history. Despite the political and religious upheaval of the Reformation and the devastating sack of Rome in 1527, Clement VII managed to continue the Medici tradition of grand artistic patronage, particularly relying on the colossal talent of Michelangelo. His commissions often reflected a desire to restore the glory of the church and to secure the Medici legacy in Florence, even as his papacy faced unprecedented challenges. One of Clement VII's most significant commissions was to Michelangelo, continuing the work on the new sacristy at the Basilica of San Lorenzo in Florence. This chapel was designed as a mausoleum for his father, Giuliano di Piero de' Medici, and his uncle, Lorenzo the Magnificent, as well as two other Medici dukes, Giuliano di Lorenzo de' Medici and Lorenzo di Piero de' Medici. Michelangelo designed the architecture, sculptures, and tomb monuments, creating a unified artistic program. The iconic marble statues of day and night and dawn and dusk adorn the sarcophagi, symbolizing the relentless passage of time and the universal nature of death. This project was deeply personal for Clement, a tribute to his family, even as he wielded power as the head of the Catholic Church. Still in San Lorenzo, Clement VII also commissioned Michelangelo to design and build the Laurentian Library, intended to house the extensive collection of Medici manuscripts. Michelangelo's innovative design for the library's vestibule, with its monumental staircase that seems to flow like lava, challenged traditional architectural conventions. The library was a testament to the Medici's long-standing commitment to scholarship and learning, and Clement's determination to complete it demonstrated his dedication to preserving and presenting his family's intellectual heritage even from a distance in Rome. The reading room itself is a masterpiece of light and proportion, designed for quiet study. While in Rome, Clement VII commissioned several important works for the Vatican. After the death of Raphael, Michelangelo became the dominant artistic force. Although the grandest commission for Michelangelo, the Last Judgment in the Sistine Chapel, was formally given by Clement's successor, Pope Paul III, it was Clement who had initiated discussions for a large-scale fresco on the altar wall of the chapel. Clement's desire to have Michelangelo undertake such a monumental project speaks to his understanding of the artist's genius and his belief in art as a powerful statement of papal authority and spiritual truth. Clement also supported Benvenuto Cellini, the famous goldsmith and sculptor. Cellini recounted in his autobiography how he crafted a magnificent gold button for Clement's cope depicting God the Father. This commission highlighted Clement's appreciation for exquisite craftsmanship and luxurious objects fitting for a Renaissance pope. Cellini also created a pontifical seal for Clement, demonstrating the pope's trust in his exceptional skill. The sack of Rome in 1527, orchestrated by the forces of Emperor Charles V, was a catastrophic event that saw the city plundered and the pope besieged in Castel San Angelo. This event temporarily halted artistic production in Rome and had a profound psychological impact on Clement. However, once he regained some stability, he resumed his patronage, often with a renewed sense of urgency and a desire to rebuild and restore the church's image. He recognized the power of art to communicate resilience and divine favor. Clement VII's artistic commissions were often intertwined with his political and religious agendas. He sought to secure the Medici family's position in Florence by installing his cousin Alessandro de' Medici as Duke of Florence, and art served as a means to legitimize this rule, with various artists creating portraits and commemorative works. He also worked with Vasari on the rebuilding of the city after the siege, and commissioned works that would communicate papal authority and the sanctity of the church. Despite the constant pressures of his papacy, Clement VII ensured that the Medici legacy in art continued to flourish. His reliance on Michelangelo for key projects in Florence and his early interest in the Sistine Chapel fresco solidified the artist's status as the most important artist of the High Renaissance. Clement's patronage demonstrated a resilience and a deep-seated belief in the enduring power of art to convey prestige, piety, and dynastic pride, even in the face of widespread chaos. Number 4, Giovanni di Lorenzo de' Medici, Pope Leo X. Giovanni di Lorenzo de' Medici, the second son of Lorenzo the Magnificent, became Pope Leo X in 1513, ushering in a period of unprecedented artistic splendor in Rome. His papacy is often described as the golden age of the High Renaissance, largely due to his extravagant and ambitious patronage. Leo X was a true Medici at heart, deeply cultured, well-educated, and eager to use the vast resources of the papacy to elevate his family's prestige and the glory of the church through art. As Pope, Leo X inherited the unfinished projects of his predecessor, Julius II, most notably the new St. Peter's Basilica and the Vatican Stands Raphael rooms. He immediately reconfirmed Raphael as the leading artist of the papal court. Raphael continued to paint the stands, including the Room of Heliodorus and the Room of the Fire in the Borgo, creating masterpieces of fresco painting that showcase the power of the papacy and the divine sanction of the church. These frescoes were filled with classical allusions, intricate compositions, and vibrant colors, setting a new standard for monumental painting. Beyond the stands, Leo X commissioned Raphael to design a series of 10 tapestries for the Sistine Chapel, depicting scenes from the lives of St. Peter and St. Paul. These tapestries were intended to hang beneath Michelangelo's ceiling frescoes during important ceremonies, adding another layer of visual richness to the chapel. Raphael produced magnificent cartoons for these tapestries, which were then woven in Brussels. These works represented a groundbreaking fusion of painting and textile art, bringing biblical narratives to life with dramatic flair and emotional depth. The cost of these tapestries was enormous, reflecting Leo X's boundless appetite for grand artistic statements. Leo X was also a significant patron of architecture. He continued the construction of St. Peter's Basilica, which had begun under Julius II. He appointed Raphael as the chief architect of St. Peter's following the death of Bramante. While Raphael's designs for the basilica were ultimately superseded, his involvement demonstrated the Pope's trust in his multifaceted talents. Leo X also commissioned various projects within the Vatican Palace, including new courtyards and private apartments, reflecting his desire for comfort and luxury. Leo X's patronage extended to Michelangelo, though their relationship was complex. While Michelangelo was primarily engaged with the tomb of Julius, the second and later commissions for Clement VII, Leo X commissioned him to design the facade of the Basilica of San Lorenzo in Florence, a family church. Although the facade was never completed, Michelangelo produced extensive drawings and a wooden model, demonstrating his ambitious vision. This commission highlighted Leo X's continued connection to his Florentine roots and his desire to embellish his family's architectural legacy. Music also flourished under Leo X. He maintained a large and talented papal choir and commissioned numerous musical works. He was a great lover of spectacle and ceremony, and music played a central role in papal masses, banquets, and processions. He promoted the development of polyphonic music and welcomed renowned composers to his court, contributing to the rich musical heritage of the High Renaissance. Leo X's court was a vibrant intellectual hub, attracting poets, scholars, and humanists from across Europe. He expanded the Vatican Library, accumulating a vast collection of ancient manuscripts and printed books, and he supported the study of classical languages and texts, continuing the humanist traditions of his father Lorenzo the Magnificent. The Pope believed that the flourishing of arts and letters enhanced the prestige of the papacy and contributed to the spiritual well-being of Christendom. His extravagance, however, came at a steep price. The immense sums spent on art, architecture, and courtly entertainment contributed to the financial strain on the Holy See. To raise funds, Leo X expanded the sale of indulgences, a practice that became a major point of contention and fueled the Protestant Reformation, which began during his pontificate. This dramatic turn of events highlights the intricate relationship between art, power, and the broader historical context of the time. Despite the controversies, Pope Leo X's patronage profoundly shaped the artistic landscape of the early 16th century. He cultivated some of the greatest artistic talents of his age, leaving behind a legacy of unparalleled masterpieces that continued to define the High Renaissance. His vision of a magnificent Rome, adorned with the finest art, was a powerful testament to the ambition and cultural sophistication of the Medici family. Number 3. Lorenzo de' Medici the Magnificent. Lorenzo de' Medici, known as The Magnificent inherited control of Florence in 1469 and reigned as an uncrowned ruler until his death in 1492. He was not a formal duke or grand duke, but his political power and cultural influence were immense. Lorenzo was perhaps the most celebrated of the Medici patrons, his name almost synonymous with the Florentine Renaissance. He did not spend wildly on single grand projects like some popes, but rather cultivated a sophisticated artistic environment supporting artists, thinkers, and artisans, making Florence the undisputed center of the art world. Lorenzo's patronage was characterized by his discerning eye and his close personal relationships with artists. He essentially created an informal art academy in his gardens at San Marco, providing young artists with access to his family's collection of classical sculptures. This exposure to antiquity was transformative for many, including a young Michelangelo Buonarroti, whom Lorenzo discovered and brought into his household. Michelangelo lived with the Medici family for several years, receiving a classical education and artistic training, an experience that profoundly shaped his future career. Botticelli was one of Lorenzo's most favored painters, creating some of his most famous works for the Medici circle. While Primavera and The Birth of Venus were likely commissioned by a cousin, Lorenzo di Pierfrancesco de' Medici, they are inextricably linked to the intellectual and aesthetic world fostered by Lorenzo the Magnificent. These allegorical paintings, often with complex mythological and humanist themes, adorned the private villas of the Medici and reflected the Platonic philosophy and classical learning prevalent in Lorenzo's court. Botticelli also painted portraits of members of the Medici family and their allies, solidifying their public image. Lorenzo also supported Verrocchio, who was a master of various media, producing sculptures, paintings, and goldsmith work. Verrocchio's workshop was a training ground for many of the period's greatest artists, including Leonardo da Vinci. Lorenzo commissioned Verrocchio to create the bronze statue of David, which stood in the courtyard of the Palazzo Medici, a symbol of Florentine Republican virtues that nonetheless celebrated the Medici's growing power. He also commissioned funerary monuments and other religious works. Lorenzo's love for ancient Greek and Roman culture was profound. He amassed an impressive collection of classical sculptures, gems, cameos, and ancient coins, known as the Medici Collection of Antiquities. These artifacts were not just decorative, they served as models for contemporary artists and as sources of inspiration for humanist scholars. He encouraged the study and emulation of classical forms, leading to a flourishing of classicism in Florentine art. Music and literature also thrived under Lorenzo's patronage. He was a gifted poet himself, writing both religious and secular verse. He supported musicians and composers, filling his court with performances. His interest in humanist scholarship led him to support scholars like Marsilio Ficino and Pico della Mirandola, who were central figures in the Platonic Academy. This intellectual environment, fostered by Lorenzo, provided the philosophical underpinnings for much of the art produced during his time. Lorenzo's patronage was less about large-scale public buildings and more about subtle, refined, and intellectually stimulating art. He commissioned private chapels, illuminated manuscripts, and exquisite decorative objects for his palaces and villas. For instance, he sponsored the work on the Sassetti Chapel in Santa Trinita, where Domenico Ghirlandaio painted frescoes depicting scenes from the life of St. Francis, subtly incorporating portraits of the Medici family and their associates. His approach to patronage was a blend of personal passion, political shrewdness, and a genuine belief in the power of culture to shape society. While he spent lavishly on art and luxury items, he was also a shrewd banker and diplomat. The art he commissioned served to enhance his family's prestige, project an image of cultured sophistication, and subtly reinforce their authority over Florence. His political skill, combined with his artistic sensibility, earned him the title the Magnificent. However, Lorenzo's rule also saw the decline of the traditional guild system, as artists increasingly worked directly for powerful patrons like himself. This shift had long-term implications for the organization of artistic production. Despite facing economic challenges and political conspiracies, Lorenzo's commitment to art remained unwavering. His legacy is not just the individual masterpieces he helped create, but the entire artistic climate he fostered, which made Florence the heart of the Renaissance. His influence continued to resonate for generations, laying the groundwork for the future Grand Dukes and Popes of the Medici family to continue their artistic pursuits. Number 2. Piero di Cosimo de' Medici, Piero the Guti. Piero di Cosimo de' Medici, often called Piero the Guti due to his debilitating illness, served as the de facto ruler of Florence from 1464 until his death in 1469. Though his time at the head of the family was short and plagued by ill health, he continued the impressive artistic legacy established by his father, Cosimo the Elder. Piero's patronage might have been less extensive than his father's or his son Lorenzo's, but it was marked by a keen eye for beauty and a particular focus on religious works and the embellishment of Medici residences. Piero's most famous commission is arguably Bernardo Gozzoli's fresco cycle, The Journey of the Magi, in the Magi Chapel of the Palazzo Medici. This lavish fresco, completed in 1459, depicts the procession of the three kings, but transforms it into a grand, colorful spectacle filled with portraits of the Medici family and their allies. Piero himself, his father Cosimo, and his sons Lorenzo and Giuliano are all recognizable figures within the vibrant crowd. This chapel was a private space for family worship, but the fresco served as a magnificent display of Medici wealth, piety, and their prominent position in Florentine society. The rich costumes, exotic animals, and detailed landscapes in the fresco reflected the Medici's taste for luxury and their interest in the wider world. Piero also continued to support artists who had worked for his father, including Donatello and Filippo Lippi. Although Donatello's major works for the Medici were completed under Cosimo, Piero inherited some of his father's artistic possessions, including Donatello's bronze group of Judith and Holofernes, which he eventually displayed in the garden of the Palazzo Medici. This sculpture, with its powerful depiction of a female hero triumphing over tyranny, was a bold choice for a private collection and spoke to Florentine ideals of liberty. Filippo Lippi, a Carmelite friar and master painter, was another artist patronized by Piero. Lippi had been supported by Cosimo the Elder, and Piero continued to commission religious works from him. Lippi's paintings, known for their delicate beauty and emotional depth, adorned various churches and private collections. Piero particularly admired Lippi's ability to depict tenderness and grace in his Madonnas and saints. He also likely supported Verrocchio, who was beginning to establish himself as a leading sculptor in Florence during Piero's time. Piero's interest in collecting ancient artifacts continued his father's tradition. He further expanded the Medici collection of classical gems, cameos, and sculptures. These ancient pieces were not just objects of study, they were displayed in the Palazzo Medici, contributing to the palace's reputation as a treasure trove of art and learning. The collection served as a source of inspiration for contemporary artists and as a testament to the Medici's refined taste and intellectual pursuits. The interior decoration of the Palazzo Medici remained a priority for Piero. He commissioned exquisite tapestries and other decorative arts to adorn the family residence. These commissions reflected a desire to create a lavish and comfortable environment that showcased the family's wealth and status to visitors. The Palazzo Medici, under Piero's direction, remained a hub for cultural and intellectual activity, welcoming scholars, artists, and political figures. Piero's illness meant he often had to conduct business from his bed, yet he maintained a firm grip on the family's affairs and continued to invest in art. His patronage was often driven by a sense of dynastic pride and a desire to maintain the family's image as cultured and powerful leaders. Even though his rule was short, the works he commissioned, particularly the Magi Chapel frescoes, left an indelible mark on Florentine art and provided a vibrant visual record of the Medici family at the height of their influence. He ensured that the artistic momentum generated by his father did not falter, setting the stage for the even greater artistic flourishing under his son, Lorenzo the Magnificent. Piero's contributions, though less heralded, were crucial in bridging the gap between two of the most significant Medici patrons. Number 1. Cosimo de' Medici the Elder. Cosimo de' Medici, known as the Elder and Pater Patriae, father of the country, effectively founded the Medici dynasty's political power, and more importantly for our story, launched their unparalleled artistic patronage. He ruled Florence from behind the scenes without holding an official title from 1434 until his death in 1464. Cosimo was a shrewd banker, a brilliant politician, and a profound patron of the arts, viewing artistic commissions not just as acts of piety or personal pleasure, but as strategic investments in his family's image, power, and the very fabric of Florence. Cosimo's most significant artistic commission was the rebuilding and decoration of the Basilica of San Lorenzo, the Medici family church. He invested vast sums in this project, entrusting the architectural design to Filippo Brunelleschi, the genius behind the Florence Cathedral dome. Brunelleschi's old sacristy in San Lorenzo, with its harmonious proportions and classical elements, became a prototype for Renaissance architecture. Cosimo also commissioned Donatello, one of the greatest sculptors of the age, to create various works for San Lorenzo, including 2 bronze pulpits and the powerful bronze doors for the old sacristy. These commissions transformed the church into a stunning testament to Medici piety and wealth. Another monumental project funded by Cosimo was the construction of the Palazzo Medici, the family's opulent private residence designed by Michelozzo. This palace, completed in 1459, was an innovative design combining defensive strength with grand classical elements. Its inner courtyard, a haven of Renaissance elegance, famously housed Donatello's bronze statue of David, a daringly naturalistic and powerful work that became a symbol of Florentine liberty. This was one of the first freestanding nude statues since antiquity, a bold statement of artistic revival and Medici confidence. The placement of such a politically charged image in a private residence demonstrated Cosimo's subtle yet undeniable power. Cosimo was a devoted patron of monastic orders and religious institutions. He provided extensive funding for the renovation and decoration of the San Marco monastery. He commissioned Michelozzo to rebuild the monastery and hired Fra Angelico, a devout Dominican friar and master painter, to adorn its cells, cloisters, and chapter house with exquisite frescoes. These frescoes, known for their spiritual intensity and delicate colors, were intended to inspire contemplation and devotion among the monks. Cosimo even had his own private cell in the monastery, indicating his personal piety and close ties to the order. Beyond architecture and sculpture, Cosimo also supported painters like Filippo Lippi, providing him with patronage and a measure of protection, despite the friar's unconventional personal life. Lippi's works for Cosimo and the Medici circle often featured delicate Madonnas and tender religious scenes, demonstrating the family's appreciation for a more intimate and emotive style of painting. Cosimo was also a passionate collector of classical manuscripts and books. He established the Laurentian Library, later housed in Michelangelo's building, commissioning scribes to copy ancient Greek and Roman texts. This dedication to scholarship was a defining feature of Renaissance humanism, and Cosimo's efforts were crucial in preserving and disseminating classical knowledge. He also collected ancient coins, gems, and sculptures, which served as models for contemporary artists and as symbols of his family's cultural sophistication. Cosimo understood the power of visual representation. The works he commissioned were not just beautiful, they were statements. The grandeur of San Lorenzo reflected his piety and his family's divine favor. The Palazzo Medici spoke of their wealth and secure position. Donatello's sculptures, bold and innovative, mirrored the Medici's own boldness and innovation in politics and finance. He was not merely a consumer of art. He actively shaped its direction, fostering the talents of artists who would define the Florentine Renaissance. His impact was profound. But Cosimo transformed Florence into a hub of artistic activity, attracting the greatest talents of his era. He laid the foundation for the Medici's continued cultural dominance, ensuring that his descendants would inherit not just a fortune, but a tradition of patronage that would continue to shape the course of Western art for centuries. His investments in art were not just about money, they were about leaving an enduring legacy, a legacy that still captivates the world today.